This video is about computation with addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, absolute value, and exponents, and using our calculator to evaluate. So first we're going to talk about the calculator skill of using a negative sign. If you look on the calculator to the right, you see there's two signs that look like a subtraction. There's one here that's between the multiplication and the addition, and then there's one down here next to the decimal point. This one down here is actually our negative sign. We use the negative sign when we're not between two numbers, or if there's two signs between two numbers. So in this red box over here where we're going to practice using our negative sign, we want to use the negative sign when it's in front of this 4 and the second time that it's by the 9. If it's just between two numbers, that's when we use our subtraction sign. So for letter A, we're going to try and type -4 minus 9, and we should get -13 as our answer here. The next one, 8. Now, this sign right here is between the two numbers, so it's going to be our subtraction. So 8 minus, there's another subtraction sign, which is actually going to be the negative this time, -9. And we should get our final answer is 17. So as we keep going with rules about operations, we'll see why those answers came out the way they did with positive and negative signs. So first, let's review our addition rules. So with addition, if they have the same sign, so if both numbers are negative or both numbers are positive, we're going to expect the same sign to come out. So if you're adding two positive numbers, this sum will also be positive. For example, 3 plus 4 equals 7. Both numbers were positive, so my solution was positive. When adding two negative numbers, your sum will be negative. So for example, -3 plus -4 is -7. Both numbers were negative, so their sum is also negative. So let's practice adding a couple of these. Remember, you can always just use your calculator. So I'm going to use the calculator just to reinforce that skill. So 8 plus 3, both are positive, equals a positive 11. Number 2, -11 plus -5. So we need the negative sign, 11 plus, now because this -5 is in parentheses, we're just going to use the parentheses still. So open parenthesis, -5, close parenthesis, enter. Both numbers were negative, so we should get a negative solution. And let's try one more example for number 3, -6. So remember, use your negative sign plus parenthesis -22. This is -28. Remember, if you don't use the negative sign, you're going to get an error. So let's say, just for example, I want to do -5 plus -2. And I use the subtraction sign. First, if I use the subtraction sign and I haven't put a number in yet, it's going to come up with this answer thing because it wants a number to be subtracted from. Later on in a problem, so let's say I did -5 plus -2. It's going to give me a syntax error. So make sure if there's two operations in a row, the second sign has to be that negative sign then. All right, so let's keep trying. What happens when we add with different signs? So when you add two numbers that have different signs, your solution is going to get the sign of the greater number. So in the first example, 4 is the bigger number. It's positive, so our sum is positive. In the second one, -4 is negative, and that's the bigger number, so our sum is negative. So number 4, we have -7 plus 9. We should expect to get a positive answer because 9 is the bigger number and it's positive. So in the calculator, -7 plus 9 gets us 2. Number 5, -9 plus 3. -9 plus 3. That should be negative because the greater number was a negative. Same thing with number 6. We should also expect a negative answer again. -27 plus 20 is -7. Remember that you can also do these by hand. And just remember that you're really subtracting the numbers and then giving it the sign of the greater value. Subtraction. So to subtract two numbers is really like adding the opposite. This is another way to think of subtraction. So -3 plus or -5 is really negative or 3 plus -5, which is -2. Remember, if you have two negatives in a row, that they are going to make a positive. So let's try a couple examples. 8 minus 5 is 3. -34 minus 30 is -64, which makes sense. Both numbers were negative. So if we think back to our addition, it's really -34 plus -30. Both numbers are really negative, so I should get a negative answer. In number 9, -6 minus parenthesis -12, which gets us 6, which should make sense again because remember, two negatives make a positive, so this is really -6 plus 12, which gets us +6. Multiplication. When we have multiplying, we have to be careful with how many negative factors we have because that's going to change what our product takes the sign of. So a product is even if it has an even number of negative factors. So if we have 0 negative numbers or 2 negative numbers being multiplied together, our product is going to end as a positive. A product is negative if we had an odd number of negative factors. So if we have one negative factor or three negative factors, we're going to have a negative product. So remember that multiplication, you can see it in three ways. You see it as a dot, you can see it using parentheses, or using something that looks like an asterisk. This is the least common. In middle school, you also used to see an X. We're not going to use X's anymore for multiplying because X's start to look like variables and can confuse some of us. So let's multiply the following. 4 times 5, both numbers are positive, so we should get a +20. Number 11, -9. Make sure we're using the negative sign for these. Parentheses, which means multiply -3. There's two negative numbers, so we should get a positive solution. Number 12, we have one negative factor, so we should get a negative solution. So 5 times -10 gets us -50. Number 13, -5 times -6 times -4. There are three negatives, which means we should get a negative product. So -5 times -6 times -4 gets us a solution of -120. 14, there's -8 times 1 times -10. It has two negatives, which means our product should be positive. So -8 times 1 times -10, that gets us 80. Now let's look at the division rules. So the division rules are going to follow the same idea here, where a quotient is going to be positive if we have an even number of negative factors, and it's going to be negative if we have an odd number of negative factors. So let's try putting these into our calculator. 12 divided by 6, both numbers are positive, so we're going to get a positive back out. 17, when it's written as a fraction, remember this still means division. So this still really means -50 divided by -10. There's two negatives, so our quotient should be positive, and we get +5. The last one we have 80 divided by -16. We only have one negative number, so our quotient is going to be negative. The last thing we're going to look at using our calculator is exponents and radicals. So this caret button below the clear, that's used for exponents if it's anything greater than 2. If it's just a squared, there's another button for that, which is the fifth one down on the left side underneath second. This is our squared button. If you want the square root, we hit second the squared button. That gives us our square root. So let's practice putting some of these into the calculator. So 22 is 12 cubed. So we're going to put 12 caret 3, and we get 1,728. 23, the square root of 196. So we're going to do second squared. Make sure you hit the second key first in order to get this logo that's at the top, which is our square root. 196, close. On some calculators, it doesn't give you these parentheses, so in order to get out of your radical, you would have to hit the right arrow button. So that's 14. 24, parentheses negative 7 squared. Make sure if there's parentheses with the negative, you are putting those parentheses in so that we can get a positive answer out. Because this is really telling the calculator we want negative 7 times negative 7. So in the calculator, parenthesis negative 7 squared, which is 49. 25 second square root, 441. Close our parentheses, and we get 21. Now, 26 is different than 24 because in 26 it's negative 6 squared. So it's really negative times 6 times 6. We're only squaring this 6 here according to how this is typed out. So in this one, if there's no parentheses, do not put parentheses in the calculator. Just put negative 6 squared, and we get negative 36. Make sure that you know the difference of when to expect a positive answer and when to expect a negative answer when squaring a number. Remember that parentheses are important in your calculator. Number 27, then, the square root of 81 is 9.